The cream-colored envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I knew exactly what was inside. The wedding invitation I'd been dreading for months. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the expensive paper stock making my stomach turn. Teresa and Edgar, my best friend and my ex-husband. I'm Nicole, and 6 months ago, my life imploded when my husband of 5 years left me for my best friend since college. Now they wanted me to watch them say, I do. You're not seriously considering going, are you? My brother Rohan's voice crackled through my phone speaker. I'd called him the moment I saw the envelope. I haven't even opened it yet, I admitted, running my finger along the sealed edge. Then don't. Throw it in the trash where it belongs. I wished it were that simple. Dad's already on my case about moving on gracefully. You know how he is. Dad can shove his opinions where the sun doesn't shine, Rohan said. He's not the one who had to watch his spouse run off with his best friend. The doorbell rang, making me jump. Speaking of Dad, he's here for dinner. I'll call you back later. I opened the door to find my father standing there, perfectly pressed suit and disapproving frown firmly in place. Nicole, he said, stepping inside. You look tired. Thanks, Dad. Always great to see you, too. He spotted the envelope on the counter immediately. Ah, so it arrived. Teresa called to let me know they were sending it. Of course she did. The betrayal stung fresh. Teresa used to call my dad just to chat, even before she started sleeping with my husband. Why are you still talking to her? Because unlike you, I understand the importance of maintaining civil relationships. He settled at my kitchen table like he owned it. Have you opened it yet? No. You should. And you should go to the wedding. I slammed a pot onto the stove with more force than necessary. Are you serious right now? You want me to watch them get married? I want you to show everyone that you're above this petty drama, that you've moved on. Petty drama? My voice cracked. Dad, they had an affair, while I was still married to him, while she was still my best friend. And now it's done. Dwelling on it won't change anything. I stirred the pasta sauce aggressively. You know what? When Mom left you for her yoga instructor, I don't remember you being this understanding. His face darkened. That was different. How? How was it different? We're not discussing that. He straightened his tie, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times. The point is, you need to start fresh. Maybe even start dating again. I'm not ready to date. The sauce bubbled angrily, spattering red dots across my stovetop. I trusted them both completely. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To have the two people you trust most in the world betray you? Nicole? No, Dad. You don't get to lecture me about this. Not when you spent 3 years refusing to even be in the same room as Mom. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the bubbling sauce. Finally, he sighed. I just don't want to see you waste your life being bitter. I'm not bitter. I'm hurt. There's a difference. I turned off the stove, my appetite gone. Maybe you should go. We haven't eaten. I'm not hungry anymore. I walked to the door and opened it. I'll call you tomorrow. After he left, I finally opened the envelope. The invitation was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected, cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. Teresa had always dreamed of a fancy wedding. Funny how she got her dream by stealing my husband. My phone buzzed with a text from my coworker Daphne. Drinks? You look like you could use one. I glanced at the invitation one more time before responding, God, yes. Meet you at Murphy's in 20? As I grabbed my keys, my phone lit up with another message, this time from Teresa herself. Hope you got the invitation. It would mean so much to have you there. We should talk soon. The audacity took my breath away. 6 months of silence, and now she wanted to talk? I thought about my father's words about moving on gracefully, about being above the drama. Then I thought about how Edgar had kissed me goodbye the morning before he left, knowing he was about to destroy our marriage, how Teresa had hugged me at lunch that same week, wearing the perfume I'd given her for her birthday, while sleeping with my husband behind my back. I typed out my response. You're right. We should definitely talk. Sometimes the best revenge starts with a simple conversation. Murphy's was packed for a Wednesday night, but Daphne had already claimed our usual corner booth. She pushed a glass of wine toward me as I slid in. You look like hell, she said, studying my face. The invitation came? Along with a text from Teresa wanting to talk. I took a long sip of wine, and a lecture from my dad about moving on gracefully. Your dad needs to shut up and let you process this at your own pace. Daphne leaned forward. Are you going to meet with her? Before I could answer, a familiar voice called out, Nicole? Oh my God, I thought it was you. Caitlin, another friend from our old circle, wobbled over to our table in two high heels. She'd clearly been drinking for a while. Mind if I join you? She didn't wait for an answer before sliding in next to me. I got the invitation too. Can you believe they're actually doing this? Believe it? I'm still trying to stomach it, I muttered. The weird thing is, Caitlin hiccuped slightly. Remember that business trip Edgar took to Boston last March? Teresa was there too. She told me she was visiting her sister Isabella, but I saw her Instagram story. She was at the same hotel as Edgar. My hand froze halfway to my wine glass. Last March? We were still married then. Oh shit. Caitlin's eyes widened. I probably wasn't supposed to tell you that. No, please, tell me more. My voice was steady, but my heart was racing. What else do you remember? I don't know. It's all kind of fuzzy now. But Isabella called me really upset around that time. Something about Teresa making bad decisions. Daphne kicked me under the table, our signal when she thought I was about to lose it. I took a deep breath. That's interesting, I said carefully, because Edgar told me that nothing happened between them until after we separated. Oh, honey. Caitlin patted my hand. You can't believe anything Edgar says. Remember when he told everyone his Porsche was paid off? I work at the bank. That car's got a massive loan on it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Teresa. Coffee tomorrow. We really need to clear the air before the wedding. She's texting you again? Daphne read the message over my shoulder. That's rich. What are you going to say? I thought about March, about Edgar's business trip, about all the late nights at the office that started around that time. I'm going to say yes. I want to hear what story they've cooked up. Nicole? Daphne's warning tone was clear. I'm not going to cause a scene, I promised. I just want to know the truth. The truth? Caitlin snorted. The truth is they're both liars. Last week at the dress fitting, Teresa was bragging about how Edgar's taking her to Paris for their honeymoon, but I overheard him telling his brother they can barely afford the wedding. My mind was spinning. Every new detail revealed another lie, another manipulation. I remembered Edgar's insistence that we couldn't afford a Paris trip for our 5th anniversary, just 2 months before he left. I should go, Caitlin announced, standing unsteadily. Don't tell Teresa I told you about Boston, okay? She'd kill me. After she left, Daphne grabbed my hand. I know that look, Nicole. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to do some digging. I pulled out my phone and typed a response to Teresa. Coffee sounds great. Tomorrow at 10, Riverside Cafe? Be careful, Daphne warned. You don't want to give them ammunition to paint you as the crazy ex-wife. Oh, I'll be careful. I smiled grimly. But if what Caitlin said is true, their whole relationship is built on lies. And lies have a way of coming to light. My phone pinged with Teresa's response. Perfect! Can't wait to see you. The heart emoji made me want to throw up. I remembered all the times she'd used that same emoji in our friendship, planning my wedding to Edgar, celebrating our anniversaries, comforting me when I thought Edgar was working too much. Working. Right. I need a favor, I told Daphne. Can you help me access archived social media posts? I want to cross-reference some dates. Already on it. She pulled out her laptop, and I might know someone who can pull Edgar's credit card statements from last March. I raised an eyebrow. Isn't that illegal? Probably. She shrugged. But so is committing adultery in some states. Want to see what other secrets they're hiding? I thought about my father's advice to move on gracefully. Then I thought about Teresa's heart emoji and Edgar's lies about Paris. Show me everything. Sometimes the truth hurts, but not as much as being played for a fool. The Riverside Cafe was quiet at 9:45 a.m. I'd arrived early to scope out the perfect table, one where I could see Teresa's face clearly, but partially hidden behind a potted plant to mask my own expressions. You're sure about this? Rohan's voice came through my earpiece. He and Daphne were parked across the street, monitoring everything through my phone's open line. Completely sure. I adjusted my phone's position on the table. Just keep recording. At exactly 10 a.m., Teresa walked in. She looked immaculate as always. Designer handbag, perfect makeup, not a hair out of place. The diamond on her finger caught the light, and I fought back a wave of nausea. It was my grandmother's ring. Nicole! Her smile was bright but nervous. Thank you so much for meeting me. Of course. I gestured to the seat across from me. What are old friends for? She flinched at the word friends, but sat down. I know this is awkward, but I really want to clear the air before the wedding. Before your wedding to my ex-husband? I kept my voice light. Yes, that might be a good idea. The waitress arrived, and Teresa ordered a complicated soy latte. I stuck with black coffee. Listen, Teresa leaned forward once we were alone. I know you're hurt, but Edgar and I, it just happened. We never meant to. Never meant to what? I interrupted. Never meant to start sleeping together while we were still married? Or never meant to get caught? Her face went pale. What? No, that's not. We didn't. Boston, last March. I watched her expression crumble. Ring any bells? Who told you about Boston? Her voice was barely a whisper. Does it matter? What matters is you lied. Both of you lied. It's not what you think. She grabbed her napkin, twisting it nervously. Edgar was unhappy. You were always working late. I was working late? I laughed harshly. That's rich, considering I have Edgar's credit card statements showing dinner for two at the Four Seasons Boston at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, while I was at home, waiting for my husband to return from his business trip. You accessed his credit card statements? Her eyes narrowed. That's illegal. So is fraud. I pulled out my phone and pulled up a document, like the loan application Edgar submitted for your wedding venue, the one where he claimed to have no outstanding debts, despite owing over $50,000 on his Porsche. Teresa's hands started shaking. How did you? I have friends too, Teresa. Friends who don't sleep with other people's husbands. Nicole, please. She glanced around nervously. Can we discuss this somewhere private? Why? Afraid someone might overhear the truth? I leaned forward. Or afraid Edgar might find out you're meeting me. Her sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit a nerve. Edgar doesn't know you're here, does he? He wouldn't understand. Wouldn't understand what? That you're trying to damage control? Or that you're having doubts? I'm not having doubts. But her voice cracked on the last word. Really? Then why did your sister Isabella call Caitlin crying about your bad decisions last March? Teresa's latte arrived, but she didn't touch it. You talked to Isabella? Not yet, but I will. I took a sip of my coffee. Just like I'll talk to Edgar's brother about that Paris honeymoon you can't afford. Stop. Teresa's voice was pleading now. Just stop. What do you want? I want the truth. All of it. Starting with when this really began. She was silent for a long moment, staring into her untouched latte. Finally, she whispered, January. January? My grip tightened on my coffee cup. We were planning my birthday party in January. I know. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Nicole. It spiraled out of control. Like the spiral of lies you're both telling about your finances. I stood up, dropping some cash on the table. Think carefully about what you want to do next, Teresa, because I have proof of everything. The affair, the fraud, all of it. Are you blackmailing me? No. I smiled coldly. I'm giving you a chance to come clean before someone else does it for you. You have my number. As I walked out, I heard Rohan's voice in my ear. Holy shit, sis. That was intense. Did you get everything? I asked, sliding into their car. Every word. Daphne held up her laptop. Plus, I just found something interesting in Edgar's company emails. Something about a secret business deal he's hiding from both his firm and Teresa. I buckled my seatbelt, watching Teresa through the cafe window. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks as she frantically typed on her phone. Good, I said, because we're just getting started. Sometimes the truth isn't enough. Sometimes you need proof to make people face their own lies. The engagement party was in full swing at the country club when I arrived. Daphne had insisted on being my +1, claiming moral support, but we both knew she was there to keep me from doing anything rash. Remember, she whispered as we walked in, we're just here to observe. And record, I added, patting my purse where my phone was already running its voice recording app. Edgar spotted me first. His face went through several expressions in quick succession, surprise, fear, and finally settling on a forced smile as he approached. "Nicole?" he said, loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "I'm glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I smiled sweetly. "Teresa and I had such an interesting chat yesterday." His jaw tightened. "Did you?" "Mm-hmm. We talked about Boston, last March. Remember that trip?" Before he could respond, Teresa appeared at his side, gripping his arm tightly. Her eyes were still puffy from crying. "Nicole," she said stiffly, "I didn't think you'd come." "Of course I came. We're all friends here, right?" Edgar cleared his throat. "If you'll excuse us, we need to greet other guests." As they walked away, I heard him hiss at Teresa. "What did you tell her?" Daphne nudged me. "Look at his body language. He's furious." We circulated the party, watching Edgar and Teresa perform their happy couple act. But now that I knew what to look for, the cracks were obvious. Every time someone mentioned the Paris honeymoon, Edgar would tug at his collar. Teresa kept drinking champagne, her hands shaking slightly. "Nicole," a deep voice called out. It was Marcus, Edgar's brother, clearly drunk and heading my way. "Marcus," I smiled. "How are you?" "Better than Edgar," he laughed. "Man's about to have a breakdown over these wedding costs. Did you know he—" "Marcus!" Edgar appeared suddenly, cutting him off. "Help me with something in the kitchen." As Edgar dragged his brother away, I followed discreetly, motioning for Daphne to create a distraction. She immediately, accidentally, spilled her drink, drawing attention away from my exit. In the kitchen's service corridor, I pressed against the wall, listening. "Keep your mouth shut about the money," Edgar was saying. "Teresa can't know about the business deal falling through. But the down payment on the venue? I'll figure it out, just like I'll figure out how to handle Nicole. She's been digging around, asking questions. Maybe if you hadn't screwed her over—" "Shut up." Edgar's voice was sharp. "Everything's under control. Just keep quiet about the Paris trip being canceled. I'll tell Teresa after the wedding." My phone caught every word. I slipped back to the party just as Daphne was finishing her apologies for the spilled drink. "You won't believe what I just heard," I whispered to her. But before I could elaborate, Isabella, Teresa's sister, cornered me by the dessert table. "I know what you're doing," she said quietly. "Do you?" I picked up a chocolate-covered strawberry. "And what exactly am I doing?" "Trying to ruin their happiness." She paused. "But maybe they deserve it." I nearly dropped the strawberry. "What?" "Teresa's making a mistake. I tried to tell her in March when she called me crying from that hotel in Boston, but she wouldn't listen." Isabella glanced around nervously. "Edgar's not who she thinks he is." "Tell me more." "I can't, but—" She pulled out her phone. "I have videos from March. Teresa was drunk, confessing everything. I kept them, just in case." My heart raced. "Can you send them to me?" "Already did. Check your email." Isabella straightened up as Teresa approached. "Just be careful how you use them. She's still my sister." Later that night, Daphne, Rohan, and I huddled around my laptop, watching Teresa's tear-stained face on the screen. "I can't keep lying," Video Teresa sobbed. "Nicole trusts me, and I'm sleeping with her husband. He says he'll leave her for me, but what if he's lying? What if he's lying about everything?" "Turn it off," Rohan said quietly. "We've seen enough." "No," I replied, my voice hard. "We need to see everything, every lie, every manipulation, because at their wedding next week, everyone else is going to see it too." "Nicole," Daphne started. "They didn't just betray me," I cut her off. "They're still lying. To each other, to everyone. It's time for the truth to come out. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting people. Sometimes it's about forcing them to face their own reflections in the mirror of truth." "You need to see this." Daphne burst into my apartment without knocking, her laptop already open. "Remember that business deal Edgar was hiding?" I looked up from my own screen, where I'd been reviewing Teresa's confession videos for the 100th time. "What about it?" "It's worse than we thought." She set her laptop in front of me. "He didn't just lose money. He lost Teresa's money. Look at these transfer records." My eyes widened as I scrolled through the documents. "He used her trust fund as collateral?" Without her knowledge. Daphne pointed to a signature. "That's not a real signature. He forged it." My phone buzzed. A text from Teresa. "Can we meet, please? It's important." Perfect timing. I showed Daphne the message. Think she's figured it out? Only one way to find out. An hour later, I sat across from Teresa at a quiet wine bar. She looked terrible, nothing like the polished woman from the engagement party. I found something in Edgar's office, she said without preamble, pulling out a folder. Please tell me I'm reading this wrong. I glanced at the papers, copies of the same documents Daphne had found. You're not reading it wrong. He stole from you, Teresa. No. She shook her head violently. He wouldn't. He loves me. Like he loved me? The words came out sharper than intended. He's a liar. He's always been a liar. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. I can't. Her voice cracked. The wedding's in 3 days. Everything's paid for. Everyone's coming. Is it paid for? I pulled out my own folder. Because according to these bank statements, the venue payment bounced last week, and that Paris honeymoon, canceled. Edgar never even booked the tickets. Teresa's face crumpled. How did you get all this? Does it matter? What matters is that you're about to marry a man who forged your signature to steal your trust fund. I could have him arrested, she whispered. You could. I leaned back. Or you could do something even better. What? You could tell the truth at the wedding, in front of everyone. She looked horrified. I couldn't. Why not? Afraid of being humiliated? I laughed bitterly, like I was when my best friend slept with my husband. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. You both destroyed my life, and now his lies are destroying yours. When does it end? I loved him, she said quietly. I still love him. No, you love who you thought he was, just like I did. I softened my tone. Look at the evidence, Teresa. Really look at it. She stared at the papers, tears falling onto the damning documents. What am I supposed to do? My phone buzzed again. Rohan sending me a new video he'd uncovered. Edgar at a bar last week, drunk, bragging to a friend about how he'd played both me and Teresa. Watch this. I slid my phone across the table. Then decide what kind of life you want. One built on lies, or one where you take back your power. Teresa's hands shook as she pressed play. I watched her face as she listened to Edgar's slurred voice. Teresa's even easier to manipulate than Nicole was. At least Nicole questioned the financial stuff sometimes. Teresa just signs whatever I put in front of her. Stop, Teresa whispered. Please. I took my phone back. The wedding's in 3 days. You have choices to make. If I wanted to tell the truth, she said slowly, would you help me? Why should I? Because you're a better person than both of us. She met my eyes for the first time. Because even though I betrayed you, you're still trying to protect me from him. I thought about my original plan, the public humiliation I'd planned for their wedding day. But looking at Teresa now, broken and betrayed just like I had been, something shifted. Okay, I said finally. I'll help you. But we do this my way. No more lies, no more games. What's your way? I pulled out my phone and dialed. Rohan, get Daphne and come to the wine bar. We need to revise the plan. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying people. Sometimes it's about helping them destroy the lies they've built their lives around. One condition, I told Teresa as we waited for the others. I want my grandmother's ring back. She slipped it off immediately, placing it in my palm. It felt lighter than I remembered, or maybe I was the one who felt lighter. Sometimes the best revenge is simply reclaiming what was yours all along, including your dignity. Are you absolutely sure about this? Rohan asked as we set up the AV equipment in the church's back room. The wedding was tomorrow, and we were doing our final preparations. For the 10th time, yes. I adjusted the wireless microphone. Teresa's on board. She knows exactly what to do. Speaking of Teresa, Daphne poked her head in. Edgar's looking for her. He knows she withdrew the remaining money from their joint account. My phone buzzed with a text from Teresa. He's furious. Says he needs the money for last-minute vendor payments. What do I say? Tell him you transferred it to the wedding planner. I texted back. Buy us more time. I still can't believe you're helping her, Rohan muttered, connecting cables to the church's sound system. After everything she did. This isn't about helping her. I checked the video feed on my laptop. This is about exposing Edgar for who he really is. The church door creaked open and Isabella slipped in. Edgar's getting suspicious. He tried to access Teresa's bank accounts this morning. Good thing we moved everything yesterday. I handed her a USB drive. Here's your part of the presentation. You're sure you want to do this? He manipulated my sister and stole her money. Isabella's voice was hard. I want to watch him burn. The door burst open again. This time it was Edgar himself, his face red with anger. What the hell is going on here? He demanded, looking around at our technical setup. Nicole, what are you doing? Final sound check for tomorrow, I said smoothly. Teresa asked me to help with the wedding presentation. Sweet of her, don't you think? Like hell she did. He stepped toward me, but Rohan moved between us. Where is she? And what happened to the money in our account? Your account? Isabella's voice dripped with contempt. You mean her trust fund that you forged documents to access? Edgar's face went pale. That's a lie. Really? I opened my laptop, turning it to face him. Should we review the evidence? The forged signatures? The failed business deals? The canceled Paris honeymoon you haven't told her about yet? You bitch, he snarled. You're trying to ruin everything. No, Edgar, you did that all by yourself. I'll stop the wedding, he threatened. I'll tell everyone you're crazy, that you're obsessed with destroying my happiness. Go ahead, I smiled. But first, you might want to check your phone. Teresa's about to send you something interesting. On cue, his phone chimed. He pulled it out, and we all watched his face collapse as he read Teresa's message. No, he whispered. She wouldn't show everyone who you really are? I took back my laptop. That's exactly what she's going to do. Unless what? His voice was desperate now. Unless you leave. Now, before the wedding. Before we show everyone the truth about the money, the lies, the manipulation. You're bluffing. Am I? I played a clip from his drunken bar confession. We have everything, Edgar. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal. He looked around wildly, seeing nothing but hostile faces. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Teresa's voice came from the doorway. She stood there, holding her wedding dress in one hand and a stack of documents in the other. Sign these. What are they? Resignation papers for your firm, admitting to your financial misconduct, and a confession about forging my signature. She dropped them on a nearby table. Sign them, or tomorrow everyone learns the truth. Teresa, baby, we can talk about this. Sign them. Her voice shook, but her hand was steady as she held out a pen. For a moment, I saw the old Edgar, the charming manipulator who'd fooled us all. But faced with undeniable evidence and 4 witnesses, he crumbled. This is your fault, he spat at me as he scrawled his signature. You turned her against me. No, Teresa said quietly. You did that yourself. Every lie, every betrayal. This is who you've always been. We just finally see it. He stormed out, leaving behind the signed documents and a heavy silence. Well, Daphne said finally, I guess we don't need the presentation anymore. Yes, we do. Teresa picked up her wedding dress. Tomorrow, everyone needs to know why there's no wedding. They need to know the truth. Are you sure? I asked. We could just cancel, tell people it didn't work out. No more lies, she said firmly. No more hiding the truth to protect someone else's reputation. As we packed up the equipment, I caught my reflection in a church window. 6 months ago, I'd been broken by their betrayal. Now I felt stronger, not because of revenge, but because of truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about bringing truth into the light and letting it do the work for you. The church was packed. Guests whispered among themselves, wondering why the groom wasn't at the altar. I sat in the back row, laptop ready, watching Teresa pace in the vestibule through the video feed. He's not coming, Daphne whispered beside me. He doesn't need to. I checked the microphone levels one last time. Everything's ready. The wedding planner was frantically checking her phone, trying to reach Edgar. The string quartet played the same piece for the 3rd time. Guests were getting restless. Finally, Teresa's father stood up. I should check on her. The church doors opened. Teresa walked down the aisle alone, still in her street clothes instead of her wedding dress. The whispers grew louder. She reached the altar and turned to face the confused crowd. Her hands shook as she took the microphone. I owe everyone an explanation. Her voice echoed through the church. There won't be a wedding today. Gasps and murmurs filled the space. I nodded to Rohan, who started the presentation. Last March, Teresa continued as photos appeared on the large screen behind her. Edgar and I started an affair while he was still married to Nicole. All heads turned to look at me. I kept my eyes forward, focused on Teresa. That was just the beginning of the lies. Her voice grew stronger. Edgar manipulated both of us. He stole my trust fund through forged documents. He lied about our future, about our finances, about everything. The screen showed bank statements, forged signatures, Edgar's drunken confession video. The crowd's reaction shifted from confusion to shock to outrage. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Is that really Edgar?" The video played crystal clear. Edgar bragging about manipulating both of us, laughing about stealing Teresa's money, boasting about his lies. "I'm not here to marry him," Teresa's voice cracked. "I'm here to tell the truth, to apologize to Nicole, to my family, to everyone who trusted us." She turned to face me directly. "Nicole, what I did was unforgivable. I betrayed our friendship for a man who betrayed us both. I'm so sorry." The silence in the church was deafening. I stood up, every eye following me as I walked to the altar. 6 months ago, I took the microphone. I wanted revenge. I wanted to destroy both of you like you destroyed me. Teresa flinched, but didn't look away. "But standing here now," I continued, "I realize something. The truth is a better revenge than any punishment I could have planned." Suddenly, the church doors slammed open. Edgar stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "Turn that off," he shouted, pointing at the screen still showing his misdeeds. "This is slander." "Is it slander if it's true?" Isabella stood up, holding more documents. "Should we show everyone the proof again, Edgar? The forged signatures? The stolen money?" "You're all crazy," he sputtered, looking around wildly. "Teresa, baby, don't do this. It's done." Teresa's voice was steel. "The police have the documents. Your firm has the evidence. It's over." 2 men in suits stood up from the middle pews, Edgar's bosses from the firm. One of them nodded grimly at Teresa. "No." Edgar's face went ashen. "You can't—" "Mr. Harper?" A police officer appeared at the church entrance. "We need you to come with us." The congregation watched in stunned silence as Edgar was escorted out, still protesting his innocence. Teresa turned back to the guests. "I'm sorry you all came here for nothing. There's still food and drinks at the reception venue if anyone wants to go." People began filing out, talking in hushed, shocked voices. Some stopped to hug Teresa. Others just stared, trying to process what they'd witnessed. My father approached me, his eyes wet. "Nicole, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you." "Yes, you should have." I hugged him anyway. "But you're here now." As the church emptied, Teresa and I stood alone at the altar, surrounded by flowers meant for a different kind of ceremony. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you rebuild," I said. "We both do." I never thought it would end like this. Neither did I. I touched my grandmother's ring, now back on my own hand. But maybe it needed to. Daphne and Rohan joined us, already packing up the equipment. "Well," Daphne said, "that was one hell of a non-wedding." "Sometimes," I replied, watching the last guests leave, "the truth is better than any ceremony." We left the church together, not as bride and bridesmaid, not as betrayer and betrayed, but as 2 women who had finally broken free from the same man's lies. Sometimes the best endings aren't the ones we planned, but the ones that set us free. The morning newspaper sat on my kitchen counter, Edgar's mugshot staring up at me. "Local executive charged with fraud. Faces 10 years. I should have felt triumphant, but instead I felt strangely empty. My doorbell rang. Teresa stood there, holding 2 coffee cups and looking uncertain. "I brought your favorite," she said, offering one. "Dark roast, no sugar." "You remembered." I let her in, noticing she'd already seen the newspaper. "How are you holding up?" "Better than him, apparently." She sat at my kitchen counter. "The firm is pressing charges. They found other victims, other women he'd scammed." "Of course they did." I took a sip of coffee. "Once a predator, always a predator." "Your grandmother's ring looks good on you," she said quietly. It always did. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Daphne calling. I put her on speaker. Turn on the news, she exclaimed. Edgar's trying to plea bargain. He's throwing everyone under the bus, including his own brother. Teresa laughed bitterly. Classic Edgar, always looking for someone else to blame. That's not all, Daphne continued. Remember that mysterious business deal? Turns out he was running a Ponzi scheme. The FBI's involved now. I watched Teresa's face as she processed this new information. You okay? Actually, yes. She straightened up. Every new revelation just confirms I made the right choice. We both did. My father chose that moment to arrive, using his emergency key despite my repeated requests not to. Nicole, He stopped short seeing Teresa. Oh, I can come back. No, stay. I surprised myself saying it. We're just watching your former future son-in-law self-destruct on national news. He joined us at the counter, looking uncomfortable. I saw the headlines. I was wrong, Nicole. About everything. About him, about moving on, about a lot of things. Like when Mom left? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He flinched. Yes, like that. I was so focused on appearances, on what people would think, that I forgot about what was real, what was true. Truth, Teresa mused. It's funny how scary it seemed before, and now it feels like the only thing that matters. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Rohan. Isabella just sent more evidence to the FBI. Edgar's going down hard. Good, my father said firmly. He deserves it. Dad? I pretended to be shocked. What happened to maintaining civil relationships? Civil relationships are for civil people. He squeezed my shoulder. Not for thieves and liars. Teresa stood suddenly. I should go. My flight's in a few hours. Where are you headed? I asked. Paris. She smiled at our surprised faces. Alone, using what's left of my trust fund for something good this time. Something for me. Good for you. I meant it. At the door, she turned back. Nicole? Thank you. Not for exposing him, though that too, but for showing me what real strength looks like. After she left, my father helped me clean up the coffee cups. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I learned from Mom, I said pointedly. She was strong too, leaving when she did. He nodded slowly. Yes, she was. Maybe I should tell her that sometime. Maybe you should. Daphne and Rohan arrived later with takeout and wine, a tradition we'd started during the whole investigation. To karma, Daphne raised her glass. To truth, Rohan added. To freedom, I said, thinking of Teresa on her way to Paris, of my father finally facing his own past, of myself, no longer defined by betrayal, but by strength. My phone lit up with a final news alert. Edgar pleads guilty to multiple charges. You know what's funny? I said, showing them the alert. I thought exposing him would feel like revenge, but it just feels like justice. Sometimes they're the same thing, Rohan pointed out. No, I shook my head. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making things right. And which one did you get? Daphne asked. I looked around my kitchen, at my father trying to use chopsticks, at my brother and best friend arguing over the last spring roll, at my grandmother's ring catching the light on my finger where it belonged. I got something better, I said. I got my life back. And this time, it's built on truth. The evening sun streamed through my windows, casting long shadows, but also illuminating everything in warm, honest light. Sometimes the best endings aren't about getting even. They're about getting free. And freedom, I realized, tastes a lot better than revenge ever could.